let's dig into the musical roots. You mentioned and alluded to your father in the previous segment. He is a fairly well-known musical person. David Mallett is probably most well-known for being the author of the Garden Song, which is a very familiar tune to people who are tuned in to folk music especially. So I imagine music was always there, but how did the two of you come into playing and writing? Was it dad driven, or was it something you guys picked up along the way just watching him?
It was always available. There was always a whole lot of encouragement. Whatever it was that we wanted to do, it didn't matter. He always had guitars kicking around. I remember being a little kid and him bringing home. We grew up. One of our first, the house my brother was born in actually was Dixmont, Maine, and it was right near the Vic Firth drumstick factory, which is up in Newport, Maine. So you could go to the dump in Dixmont and get like bags of drumsticks. My dad would bring these back to us, so we just had drumsticks laying around and pianos around and guitars around and whatever else we wanted to get into. So it was always encouraged, but it wasn't like, I wouldn't call it driven, not by any means. But we were immersed in it. You know, he lived a life. He didn't do anything else for his 73 years. He started when he was 16 years old, I think, and he went right up until the end. So it was always there. And being in Nashville, I think, especially in that era in the 90s, it was like kind of I don't want to say the end, but it was the changing of the guard almost, that era. It was like Towns was gone and Steve Earle was like leaving Nashville and Garth Brooks was coming in and things were changing a little bit. So to live next door to Bella Fleck, you know, stuff like that, it's stuff we didn't have the same appreciation for then that we did now. But looking back, it was a very plausible thing. Like, yeah, my dad works in the music business. Everybody I know works in the music business. This is something people do for a living. It's not weird. And then you come back to rural northern Maine, and our dad is definitely the only one from Quebec, Maine doing this for a living, you know, up until we started. So having that perspective, having it seem like a plausible and like realistic thing for us to go do, I think was super important, because it could have been easy to, you know, not think of it as realistic and just go get some other job. But so in that way, yes, it was super helpful and it was very, very influential as far as choosing it as a career. As far as us playing music together, that was even something that happened later. My brother picked up guitar way, way earlier than I did. I was always words. I wanted to write. I wanted to be an English major. Words were everything for me for a long time. And even in previous musical projects, I was just a front man. I wasn't playing guitar. I wasn't playing an instrument. I kind of played drums a little bit. But when this band started, other projects had ended. My brother came back to Maine. The timing, everything was just falling into place. And I had been playing guitar a little bit more. And really the first 2 years of this band was me like figuring it out. And we were a 6-piece at that point. We had 4 guitars on stage. So it didn't feel like I had a lot of weight on my shoulders. I had a lot of room to kind of figure it out, to learn as I went. So that was in my 20s. You know, we were into our 20s before we actually started making music together. But by the time we did, it felt like a supernatural, super easy thing to do. It just, it was never difficult. It all just kind of worked well together. And I think vocally, I think lyrically, I think musically, I think we were more on the same page than we maybe ever would have thought when we were like 15, 16 years old, because we were into totally different stuff back then. So somewhere along the line, it all just came together, and that's probably because of our dad. That's where it all stemmed from.
I can't even imagine that encouragement from your father probably meant everything, you know. Whose idea was it to start the band for you guys to play together?
Probably our bass player. It's probably Nick's idea. Yeah, I think Nick was the one that was like, we're doing this, kind of taking charge of the whole thing. But originally, it happened very, very fast. It was the 3 of us. Me and Nick had been in bands together, and we were living together, and Will came to Portland, Maine, and was like staying with us and kind of dipping his toes into the music scene here, which is a really, really rich music scene. And it took right off. So between the 3 of us sitting around a living room, realizing these songs are sounding super cool. Like, we got something super cool here. Everything else just kind of took off. We grabbed some guys real fast. We knew just who to talk to. We knew what we wanted it to sound like at the time. We were kind of going for a string band vibe even early on, thinking we'd play bar gigs, maybe get like a weekly spot at Bramhall Pub, like who knows. But within the first year, the gigs just really, they got bigger and bigger, and the venues got cooler and cooler, and people started finding us. So it was easy from there on. It took us away from whatever plans we had before.
So what I'm hearing there is Will was the key. Will, what caused you to move home, and was it to start a band, or was it some other reason?
Kind of to start a band, to go to Portland. I got out of college. I was a history major, and I thought maybe I'd teach or something like that. Moved back to the hometown, spent a summer working construction, had a ball, but in October, this is just fun to think about. We were jacking camps. So it was getting pretty cold, and I'm down underneath a camp, which for people not in Maine is like a cabin, down there with a little small spade, just shoveling out dirt, like wet in the wet mud, all day long. And I was like, all right, I gotta do something else. So before I made any big responsible moves, I thought, let's go to Portland. We'll try to start a band with Luke and Nick, who had already been talking about it, and we'd been discussing it for a little bit, but it was, let's go try the band thing for a little bit, and then I'll get do something with my life later on or whatever. But like Luke said, like we were really kind of amazed at how the people started coming to the shows started getting better. Next thing you know, we had a record done, and it was like, okay, this is going pretty well. Let's stick with it for a little bit.
Nice. Just out of curiosity, did you guys ever write with your father? What did he think about your all's work?
Yeah, both of us on his later records. I think we both have writing credits in the last couple, and he was the best. He was the best. Like he just loved it. He loved our involvement. My sister too. He loved bringing us on stage, sharing the stage with us. I think was probably his happiest moments. Like nice. You didn't see him smile all the time. He was generally a pretty stressed out guy, but when he got to like share that feeling with us, you could see him just really happy. And the same with my sister, and the same with the studio stuff, because we got to be around for the last few records and be involved. And I wrote a verse for Celebration, which is one of the songs that he was really, really proud of on that last record. I think him and Will had like 3 co-writes on that last record. It was 2 or 3. It was super fun. It was super easy. And he was an intimidating figure. He was an intimidating guitar player, and he was an intimidating writer. It's hard for me to imagine looking back that I could put out some of the words that came out of him. I mean, he was just a poet, So if I can get even half that good, I'll be stoked. But for him, it was like I wrote a verse on Celebration, and the song was never the same without me. If I wasn't there on it, it wasn't the same song. He wasn't as excited about it. So that was kind of a cool feeling.